FMS sent us the P-47 to 1500 millimeter, and this thing is super cool. Actually forgot to bring the belly tank, but we're gonna fly without it. It's probably better to have a little bit of less drag today with all the wind that we're flying in. This thing has been flown off camera already. It handled really good on an SMC 5300 pack. My wife's over here filming with me, trying to keep up. It's a little, little challenging today with the winds and whatnot. I wanted to go over some quick features of this plane. Every single surface on this plane is gapless, so there are no, like on the ailerons and the flaps, there's no gaps that you can see. It's all hinged correctly. And by correctly, I mean it's with a carbon fiber rod that's being hidden. Same with the elevator and the rudder. It looks fantastic. This plane is just over 400 bucks. I think it's 429. And this thing looks and feels like something that costs way more than this does. Look, this is even the first tail dragger that I've flown that has a retractable tail wheel. Look at this thing go. Isn't that awesome? It just looks phenomenal. In the sky, this thing handles really good. It is a little squirrely on takeoff, and it's not being helped by the fact that we have variable shifting winds. But you know what? We're gonna make do with what we got, and we're gonna go ahead and get her up.
The P-47 uses a battery tray system that's very similar to the FMS Pitts version 2, so make sure that you lock the battery in place before you fly.
The wind's really just picked up on us, but we're gonna try to take off into it anyway. We're gonna probably see some issues when we cross between the hangars as in the direction that we're going. So I'll do my best to get her up. Here we go, flap stiffy. Nope. We're gonna show you guys a warts and all approach. I'm almost positive some of that was wind, so what we're gonna do is get out of the shadows and try to take off from here so that we're already being affected by it rather than entering it as we throttle up. All right, here we go, second try. There we go. No scale takeoffs for us today, unfortunately. We are flying on an SMC 4400 pack. It's a 4000 series pack, so it does have a little bit of weight to it, but it's not too lightweight. You can see the plane getting kicked around by turbulence up there. We're running an AR637 receiver. That has custom programmed AS3X on a gain value of 2X. I think we're at 50 gain for the roll and 70 for pitch and 20 for yaw. Winds notwithstanding, this thing is handling pretty good. I do have to keep some throttle on it. I can't really glide too much in these winds, especially when I enter areas of wind shear where the plane starts to sink. You can see it kind of tracking into the crosswind right now. Even when I'm using rudder, it doesn't want to fly straight. These are flying machines, guys. They do get affected by the prevailing winds. But because it's a 1.5 meter model, it does have a very good light characteristic so far. I like how it handles. It handles much bigger than it is, partially because of the gyro that I put into it. Let's put it into like a knife edge pass, see how pretty that can be. Go ahead and throttle up. There we go. Aside from getting kicked around by turbulence a little bit, it handles it pretty well. I'm trying to keep my movements nice and deliberate for my wife, and that way she can keep up.
Thanks, hon.
You're welcome, dear. It also makes the plane look better too, and I don't just jank it around. And that's one thing I don't think we're going to do a performance setup on this plane. I'll show you guys how to set it up, but I don't see myself doing a crazy performance for this because, you know, it's a fighter from World War II. I don't want it to hover. It just looks stupid if it did anyway. Not that it can't hover. I mean, you can bring it up and put it into one if you want. Like right about now, it'll fight you like crazy. If I can get it to stay stable for a second. Yeah, you know, nobody came here to watch this thing hover, so we're not going to bother. I gave it a try, but it is a little on the nose-heavy side. Not surprised, considering the battery is located all the way at the front of the plane. It's got relatively good roll rate. Handles well. Pitch authority is pretty good. I don't have to use much of the stick to get it to throw around. Rudder authority is more than ample. You can see me kind of throwing it around with the rudder right now. Get a little bit of a wiggle waggle. It doesn't try to drop a wing on you, which is nice. Looks like there's some dihedral in the wings, which are helping with that. Overall, the fit and finish of this thing is fantastic. I mean, I can't believe this plane costs $429. It's remarkably good looking for what it is. Let's go ahead and drop the wheels, put it into a little quick touch and go. This is challenging in these winds, but we'll do what we can to show you guys how this plane lands and flies. Trying to keep some center line discipline here. It is not easy to do this at all with these winds. They are just, it doesn't look that bad, but when you're in the sky and the plane's getting wobbled around and kicked around, it's difficult to land in. There was a landing we had earlier on camera, but not during this segment, where the plane basically was just dropping wings left and right because it was going through a zone of wind shear between those buildings, where the buildings blank out a lot of the wind, and then it flies into dead zones, and then it flies into strong winds again, which is about what it's going to do here in a second. You can see it starting to get kicked around a little bit. Now it's stabilizing because it's getting out of it. It is very stable with the flaps out and the gear out. You don't have much to worry about with this. If you can land a tail dragger, you can probably land this P-47. Because it's so big, it has a very graceful presence to it. It doesn't require too much stick input to do much. It doesn't roll all that great. Even at 150% rates, it doesn't do much. Like, let's put it into 100%. So here's high rates. So it's not much of a difference between the 150 rates and the 100% rates. It basically handles almost identically. Put it into another quick touch and go, show you guys how it handles some more in some different winds. I absolutely adore that retractable tail wheel. I've never flown a plane with that, and it just looks so freaking cool. Right as we get into that sunny area where the buildings stop blocking the wind is when the plane starts getting kicked around. You can see it yaw on the ground. It was fine coming from the other direction, so it just depends on the prevailing winds. If they're coming from behind us like they are right now, then we have to land this direction, and then that's when we run into that wind shear zone. A little bit of rudder and some full aileron causes it to do a quick spin, which is awesome. A lot of planes will do that if you give it rudder. Like, watch this, full left rudder, full left aileron. There's the spin. Almost a rudder roll. It's pretty cool. Let's get some inverted performance going, show you guys how that handles. I have to use about, say, 20% of the stick with some expo. Get nice and low. This thing looks awesome. I never really flown a true big warbird like this before, so I'm happy that I can do it. It just shows that, the more you fly, the better you get. I used to be terrified of flying tail draggers, especially ones like this. These warbirds tend to be, there's a lot of myths associated with warbirds that they tend to stall more often. You just keep your turns coordinated by turning your nose into your turn with the rudder, and just keep the throttle up as you bank, and you should be okay. And we get a little bit of stalling, wind shear rather. Sorry, dear. It's a windy day.
It's just a little close.
A little close. You go up in there and intercept that vulture flying around. The scale detail on this thing, speaking of intercepting stuff, the machine guns look fantastic. The scale details that they molded into the fuselage look incredible. I'm going to keep doing a little bit more landing practice because I want to get used to this plane and how it flies. So far, it's very impressive. We're getting a pretty decent amount of flight time. It said 18 minutes, but that's because I didn't reset the timer earlier. My center line discipline could use some improvement for sure, but at least the plane's tracking straight, especially now that the winds have kind of died off a bit. Let's put it up into a tail slide, so hold it up. Get it to go all the way vertical. Let go of the throttle. Perfect. Get a gear out pass. I find that my landings are much better coming from this direction, so let's go ahead and try another one. So we're just above storage voltage right about now under load, so we're going to be bringing this plane in another minute or two. Do a little bit more talking about it. Give you guys my score. I will say right now, it's got to be a relatively high score. I love how this thing flies. I love how it looks. It feels great in the sky, even in this crazy wind. This airport has a lot of issues. If you ask any of the pilots here, they'll tell you that once you get to a certain level around these treetops is when things get weird. One of my friends who owns the Cirrus SR-22, he comes flying, and I've seen him fly right at the treetops, and he's getting jostled around like crazy. So it's no difference, or sorry, no surprise that these model airplanes would get it too. Really, so when it comes to these landings too, if you have your elevator trimmed with your flaps so that you got a bit of pitch down compensation, you don't really have to hold the nose forward when you're landing like this. You can actually let the trim do the work for you, which I prefer. It feels more intuitive to me, but other pilots may disagree. But I'm hands off right now. Let's just with the rudder. There we go. Got my hands back on there right as it started veering. But when I was hands off and it was tracking, the trim down with the thrust coming off of the prop wash was holding it in place. So it was doing just fine. Gotta watch out for those vultures. Wonder how they'll feel if I encroach into their airspace. They don't seem very happy about that. I'm not trying to chase you guys, buddy. I just gotta like get into the pattern, you know? It's not my fault you guys are in unauthorized airspace. All right. We're gonna go ahead and bring her in, make this the final landing if it's a good one. Keep that turn coordinated. Nope, going around. That was a terrible landing. Let's try again. Flip her around. There we go. Okay, turn that nose. Level her out. Keep those wings as level as we can, especially as the wind starts to pick up just a little bit.
22.61 volts.
Can't ask for much better than that. Flying a tail dragger is not much different than pushing a shopping cart backwards. The second that plane's in the transition phase from tail up and wheels down, it's just weird to fly. Overall though, I gotta say, I love this thing. It has been really good to me in the past. I put it through 2 flights already, a lot of touch and goes, a lot of landing practice. It looks great. I mean, it handles fantastic. You can't beat the way this thing looks. Unlike a lot of FMS planes, this one got the full paint treatment. The silver paint on it looks phenomenal in the sunlight. I mean, look at how good this is. This is just fantastically good. The major issue I'm going to have with this thing, and I'm going to caution you guys about, is that these wheels are solid plastic. These are basically like, hey dear, what was that thing called that the kiddos had? That little cart that they sat in? It was red with the yellow top. Cozy something.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Those little like push cars.
Yeah, Flitetest made one of those things fly. I think it's like a cozy car or something like that.
Yeah. These
wheels are basically the same material as that. So they're like, watch me try to squeeze this. You cannot squeeze it because it is solid plastic. So you can already see that if she zooms in here, you'll see that the tread is starting to wear off. If you do go with a wheel, this looks like a 3-inch wheel. I'd say get a TwoBros, maybe super light, that has what do you call it, the diamond pattern, to give it a little bit of a scale appearance to it. And if you wanted to, you could paint the hubs. That's going to be a point off, a full point, I'd say, because you have a nice suspension on these things, right? Like you can see me pushing it, and there is a suspension at work here a little bit, although it's not really demonstrating. So how about this? I will put the plane on the ground and then demonstrate the suspension, because it's just not behaving with me right now. So watch this wheel on the right here, and as we get it down, see, we can push this one down, push that one down as well. So there is suspension to it, but it doesn't seem to do a whole lot when the plane is basically wheels up, or like this. It does nothing like this because the wheels get pushed outward, but when it's up like this is what I meant to say, is when it has the most effect. So that's when you're going to see it actually working. Otherwise it doesn't do anything at all. Overall, my score for this thing, I'd say it's a solid 9 out of 10. It could be 9.5, maybe even 10 out of 10 if FMS had actually used better wheels. I can't argue with anything else in this plane. It handles fantastic, it looks beautiful. You guys are really doing yourselves a disservice if you don't pick one of these up for yourselves. We do have a link in the description if you'd like to help us out. But in the meantime, we're going to go on to the B-roll footage, talk more about the flight characteristics, and then we'll see you guys again next time.
A lot of pilots look to YouTube videos to see how a plane handles, so here's the raw deal on how this P-47 performs. There's a reason why tail draggers have their own licensing requirements for full-scale flying. Ground handling is naturally harder because the center of gravity is behind the main wheels. The key to taking off with the tail dragger is smoothly applying throttle until the tail begins to fly, keeping the model centered as best you can with rudder throughout the takeoff roll. It will take practice, but practice eventually makes perfect. Don't be afraid to make mistakes here. One of the first things that we do when getting a new model is performing landing practice. This is the best way to learn an airframe during its most critical phases of flight. Most RC pilots are going to crash during takeoff or landing, and this is where you should invest the bulk of your time into perfecting your skills. I like to say that the best aerobatics in the world mean nothing if you can't bring a plane down safely, and I feel that this applies to full scale and model scale as well. We highly recommend that you pick a shallow glide slope so that you don't slam the mains into the pavement or in the grass. The wheels are hard plastic and will get torn up easily, and all foam airplanes benefit from gentler touchdowns. With the short setup guide following after this B-roll section, you'll see our recommended flap system settings that help keep the plane sticking to the pavement with minimal bouncing. This P-47 is definitely susceptible to wind shear caused by obstructions like the large hangars to the right of the model that you can't see. If you're flying on windy days, we recommend that you keep the power on a little hotter than you would normally to help power through zones of turbulence. We will say that even in these winds, it was pretty stable and enjoyable to fly. It can just be a little bit of a handful because it doesn't react to turbulence all that well. This model loves to fly fast. With good batteries like our SMC 4400 and 5300 packs, you can get a lot of flight time even if you're pegging the throttle. It has an amazing scale presence to it that almost makes you feel like you've traveled back in time. It's simply stunning to look at, but there are some downsides we didn't cover yet because they didn't pop up until the B-roll flights. If you peg the throttle and perform knife edge, the canopy will come off. This can be a major problem if your battery was not secured completely with the locking mechanism. Ours was, so we were able to land it safely and take it back up. But you may wish to try the FMS Pitts battery mod developed by our friends at Model Aviator in order to feel confident that it will always stay secured. An additional magnet for the canopy wouldn't hurt either. These are some things that we feel FMS can really improve upon for future releases. Before we move into the quick setup section, we wanted to showcase the slow flight capability with flaps. The P-47 putts along quite well with full flaps. If slow flight is your thing, it's not the queen of it, but it flies nice and slow. With this final landing, let's move on to our patented quick setup guide. If there's anything here that we didn't cover, feel free to ask and we'll do our best to help you out. The manual goes over all major assembly areas, so there's no need for a several hour-long video of John screwing things in, screwing things up, or putting it together. So we're going to go ahead and cover the major beats so you can get back to your day. Do be aware that the manual doesn't mention that the shorter fiberglass wing spar goes in the back and the longer one goes up front. If you're using a Spectrum receiver like our AR637T, and the link is in the description, it comes with a voltage wire that connects to the voltage port on the receiver. Just cut a small slot into the ESC leads and slide the tinned ends of the voltage wire into the respective matching colored wire, then wrap it with electrical tape. You'll have voltage telemetry after you do this. We're flying on 150% rates for ailerons, elevator, and rudder. Flaps are set to -120 degrees up in the servo setup so that they align flush with the wing when retracted. 2 seconds of flap deployment is all that's needed, and the on-screen info shows what our flap settings and elevator compensation are set to. There isn't a whole lot to setting up one of these simpler propeller models. All you need is a 1 aileron and 1 flap wing type, and to ensure that all the servos are moving in the correct direction. Gyro setup will be to your personal taste, but we would recommend starting with 2x gains with 20 roll, 35 pitch, and 15 yaw. You can fine-tune from there, but that should fly well without being obtrusive. Our elevator's ball link coupler would not fit on the plastic ball, so we did replace the ball link system on the elevator with free wing versions instead. We would also suggest this as an upgrade to the entire airframe for longevity and security. We hope this helped you out. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time with a new upload.